Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm happy to call to order this meeting of the Oversight Committee. It is 8:34 a.m. Dr. Hernandez, please proceed with the roll call.
Oh, okay. Dr. Cummings,
Present.
Mr. Margot. Here. Mr. Montgomery. Here. Dr. Patel. Ms. Payne. And Dr. Rice. Is he online?
Dr. Rice is present. He's walking in.
Okay. Dr. Rosenfeld. We have a quorum.
Members, you have the draft minutes from the November 15th Oversight Committee meeting in your agenda packet behind tab 1. Are there any corrections to the minutes as circulated? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the November 15th Oversight Committee meeting.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, vote aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next agenda item is public comment. Texans created CPRIT. Opening our meetings with public comment underscores this board's commitment to transparency and accountability. Ms. Doyle, has CPRIT received any requests to provide public comment? Our next agenda item is item 5. Mr. Roberts will provide the Chief Executive Officer's report.
Thank you, Dr. Cummings. As shown in attachment 1 on page 2-4, if you approve the Academic Research and Prevention Awards that the Program Integration Committee has recommended at a level of nearly $99 million, you will have $111 million to award for the remainder of the fiscal year. Y'all are aware, on February the 5th, the Texas Academy of Medicine, Engineering, Science, and Technology, TAMIS, awarded CPRIT the 2024 K. Bailey Hutchison Distinguished Service Award. This is the highest honor that TAMIS bestows on individuals or organizations, and CPRIT is the first state agency to receive this recognition. 4 members of the Oversight Committee and 1 former member were able to attend the ceremony, as well as several members of our senior staff. This is an honor in which everyone associated with CPRIT, Oversight Committee members, staff, peer reviewers, advisory committee members, and some 1,900 grant recipients just like my dog, that have 1,900 grant recipients can take great pride. We intend to have the 2 medals framed and displayed prominently in the CPRIT office. I'm also pleased to report that CPRIT is once again the beneficiary of Travis County Emergency Services District Number 12 Fire Up for a Cure fundraising effort for Breast Cancer Month in October. The award amount will be dedicated to patient services in the prevention program. CPRIT released its annual report for fiscal year 2023 on January the 31st. The report, which CPRIT makes available only online, highlights the progress CPRIT and our grantees have made towards the agency's 3-part mission. While the report is a team effort across the entire agency, it was coordinated and spearheaded by Kristen Doyle. However, special recognition needs to be given to Mark Leffler, Justin Rand, Bridget Barstow, Shannon Kusick, and Royce Hart. That's an enormous undertaking, folks. Also, on page 2-7 is my required report on the progress and continued merit of our research program. I would encourage you to read the memo. I'm not going to read it to you, but there is a lot of really good information in that memo, and I usually carry a copy of that around with me when I'm visiting with people so that I've got those metrics handily available. We are now, believe it or not, starting planning for our legislative appropriations request and other possible items for consideration by the legislature in January. In fact, just yesterday, we received instructions for the strategic planning part of the process, so it has begun. I'd like to remind you that if you have any items you would like included in our budget request or our legislative agenda, that you let me know as soon as possible. Bringing these items to our attention in the fall or after session has begun can be problematic. All requests and must be approved by the full Oversight Committee for inclusion. On April 19th, the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network is hosting an event in the Rio Grande Valley at which CPRIT will have a role. The location, I just found out this morning, I think it's going to be in Harlingen, but the agenda has not been finalized. However, I want to call this to your attention in the event that you, if you're interested in attending, Dr. Hernandez, particularly for you, to block that date on your calendar. I'll also add that as soon as this meeting is over, Dr. LeBeau is trucking down to Houston for another ACS CAN event that will take place tomorrow morning. Finally, I'd like to make public what all of you and CPRIT staff know, and that is my intent to step down effective June 30th. For those videoing in, this decision will be a topic of discussion in closed session at the end of today's meeting. I'm sorry. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for allowing me to participate in this historic initiative for the last 11 years. 3 of you, Bill, Craig, and Will, have been doing CPRIT almost as long as I have. Texas operates through a rigorous system of boards and commissions. Few members of the public have any idea how much time and work goes into being on a state board. I do. Thank you for your sacrifice. Dr. Cummings, thankfully, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. On behalf of the entire Oversight Committee and the former Oversight Committee members, I don't think there are adequate words to express the enormity of the impact that you have had on this agency and on our state for decades to come. I look around the dais, though, and I realize that there will likely not be lack of words. So this is not our last opportunity to congratulate you and roast you, perhaps, and is not your last meeting with us. But please accept our sincere thanks and gratitude and best wishes. Are there any questions for Mr. Roberts today? Dr. Rice.
Could I just second and express thanks and appreciation for your work for the last 11 years from the team.
And you were in my office before you even got appointed. You were with us you were with us in that session in 2013.
Thank you. Yeah. And I apologize for being there so early.
Thank you again. All right, moving on to item 6, Chief Compliance Officer Report and Compliance Certification. The chair recognizes Mr. Burgess to present the Chief Compliance Officer's report.
Good morning. You'll find my compliance update behind tab 3. I'll give one brief update and then I'll pass it over to Mr. Nance. Did you say something about a roast for Wayne? Did you? Okay.
You will be first in line,
Okay.
I'm sure, Mr. Burgess.
So I just wanted to highlight very briefly the delinquent reporting. We had reported out in the board governance subcommittee and the audit subcommittee. As you may recall, we have sort of a self-imposed 5% threshold for delinquent reporting. Again, that is not in any administrative rule. That is a barometer that we've used for ourselves. We broke that ceiling significantly at the end of January in the upwards of 68, 70 reports. We're back down to about 57 as of yesterday. We've met internally, we've identified some opportunities internally in terms of CPRIT resources, some requirements for grantees in terms of formats of the reports and et cetera. And we've also identified some opportunities in terms of technical assistance and specific training for grantees. So it's sort of a bifurcated approach. I anticipate having more to report out to you in May, but I wanted you to know that we've seen this number, we're addressing it, and we're definitely going to attack it. So to get that back down, I'm happy to answer questions if you have any, and if not, then I'll pass it over to Mr. Nance.
Thank you, Vince. Just to highlight a couple of quick activities for this past quarter. We completed 10 on-site reviews for the months of November, December, and January. We're actually slated this year to cover 32 on-site reviews. These are our more intensive reviews that we perform throughout the year. On page 3-3, like to highlight our match expenditure reviews. So far for this fiscal year, we've reviewed over $16 million in match funds. We actually performed 5 annual match expenditure reviews this past quarter. As you recall, last year, we actually reviewed just over 24 million for the entire year. So we're already at $16.5 million in reviews. So we're excited about that, and there will be significant increases in our match expenditure reviews for this fiscal year. And then lastly, to highlight our training efforts so far this past quarter, our compliance staff performed 6 authorized signing official trainings. The institutions that we trained for their new ASOs were the UT Health Science Center at Tyler, University of Texas at Austin, Baylor Research Institute, Pulmatech, Acilia Therapeutics, and Stellanova Therapeutics. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Burgess or Mr. Neer?
If I can, please. Mr. Burgess, the roast has to be in very strict compliance with the Burgess standards, please.
No other way, sir. No other way.
Very good. Turning to the certification of award slates that we will consider today, Mr. Burgess, please present your compliance certification report.
Thank you, Dr. Cummings. My compliance certification was made available to you in the portal. The memo is dated February the 9th. We had a slight update to that as you were notified yesterday, day before by Ms. Eckel. I've conferred with CPRIT staff and General Dynamics, GDIT, that's our third-party grants administrator, and I've reviewed all the supporting documentation in addition to the third-party observer reports. Now, we have a grant contractor who sits in on every one of these meetings and make sure that the process is followed, and I get a report for every peer review meeting. So I've reviewed all that information, and I'm satisfied that the award recommendations for your consideration this morning follows CPRIT's peer review process and administrative rules, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any further questions for Mr. Burgess? Thank you so much, gentlemen. We'll move to item 7, the Chief Scientific Officer report. The chair recognizes Dr. LeBeau to provide the academic research program update. As part of her update, she will present the proposed FY 2025 RFAs for our consideration. Following the update, she will introduce the Program Integration Committee's grant award recommendations. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm delighted to present the Program Integration Committee recommendations for FY 2024 Review Cycle 1 and Recruitment Cycles 23.3 point 4, and point 5. And this includes 46 awards from 8 mechanisms, and you can find this information beginning on page 4 of the proposed grant award book. I'd like to go through and describe both the proposed awards and the recruitment awards and then the RFAs. And please stop me throughout the presentation if you have questions, but you may wish to consider, hold off and consider your vote after I've presented the entire slate. Can we have the first slide, please? This table illustrates the 46 grants that have been recommended by the Program Integration Committee. I'll point out that the Scientific Review Council recommended 53 applications. However, because this exceeded our available funds for the second quarter of 2024, the PIC recommended 46 applications to the Oversight Committee. And this includes 39 individual investigator research awards and 7 recruitment awards. On the next table, on the next slide, the priorities addressed by these awards are illustrated. And I'm pleased to say that these awards cover 7 of the academic research program priorities, including the recruitment of outstanding cancer researchers, a broad range of innovative investigator-initiated research projects, and many of our targeted awards, each of our targeted awards, I should say, for computational systems biology, childhood cancer, and clinical trials and prevention. Thank you. Table 3 describes the Scientific Council recommendation of 32 individual investigator awards. Due to limited funding, the Program Integration Committee recommends funding 27 awards totaling just over $28 million. And you can find the slate of awards on pages 6 to 8 of your program award book. I think you'll see that this is a really nice mix of basic and translational research. The awards address significant gaps in our knowledge, and they also address a number of tumors for which we need better therapies. Next slide, please. Table 4 illustrates the recommendation for the IRA awards, the targeted awards for cancer in children and adolescents. And the PIC recommended 5 IRAs totaling just under $7 million. And you'll see these awards listed on this slide.
Dr. LeBeau, I'm sorry. There's construction behind us. We're having a hard time hearing today.
Okay,
We maybe
let me try getting a little closer. Is that better?
closer.
Thank you for letting me know.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, I think we can move to the next slide. Table 5 illustrates the PIC recommended awards for the computational and systems biology of cancer. And there are 3 awards that are recommended that you see listed on this slide. On the next slide, table 6 illustrates the recommended awards for clinical translation, and you see the 3 grants recommended here. And the last slide illustrates the single award for prevention that was recommended by the PIC. Okay. Are there any questions on the recommended slate of IRA awards? If not, I'd like to move to describe the slate of recruitment awards. The first award is the recruitment of Dr. Anna Malkova, who has been nominated for a CPRIT Established Investigator Award from the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio. And she would be appointed as a professor in biochemistry and structural biology and the Mays Family Endowed Chair in DNA Repair Genetics. Dr. Malkova leads an internationally acclaimed research program examining the mechanisms and genetics of DNA repair, with a particular focus on the pathways of DNA double-strand break repair. And during her postdoctoral fellowship, Dr. Malkova discovered break-induced replication, which is a unique form of replication-dependent conservative DNA replication. And this has since become a field on its own. She is proposing to expand her research program to examine the mechanisms of DNA repair pathways, and in particular, break-induced replication, and how dysfunction in these pathways leads to the accumulation of genetic mutations and large-scale chromosome aberrations, which are a hallmark of cancer. An important aspect of her work is that she will also be working with the CPRIT-supported Center for Innovative Drug Discovery at UT Health San Antonio to develop small chemical compounds that can target key enzymatic components of this particular pathway that could be developed into novel cancer therapeutics. The second award is Dr. Zilin Shen, who has been nominated by the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center for a CPRIT Established Investigator Award and appointment as professor in the Department of Gastrointestinal Medical Oncology. Dr. Shen is an exceptional computer scientist and bioengineer who focuses on interdisciplinary and translational research. Now, he proposes to integrate engineering, computational, and biological techniques to address critically unmet needs, including 3 separate projects, one to develop new treatments for minimal residual disease in refractory colorectal and liver cancer, using a new technique for tumor microspheres to screen for drug sensitivity. He is also focusing on eliminating cancer-associated cachexia, and a third project to elucidate the role of the microbiome in progression and treatment responses. A common thread is that he uses computational approaches to improve cancer care. Moving now to the slate of 2 Rising Star Awards. There were 5 nominations and 3 were recommended. 1 was withdrawn by the institution, so I will be presenting 2 Rising Star Awards to you. The first is Dr. David Sarla, who's been nominated by Rice University for a CPRIT Rising Star Award and appointment as Associate Professor in the Department of Chemistry. Dr. Sarla is a internationally recognized leader in organic synthesis, and he has developed methodologies for synthesizing potent anti-cancer agents from natural products. And many of you will be aware that natural products are an important source of therapies for cancer, but the development of these agents is often limited, both because of their complex structure and limited availability, which create obstacles that prevent their clinical development. So Dr. Sarla is proposing to use cutting-edge AI and informatics to facilitate and really advance the synthesis of bioactive natural compounds to determine their mechanisms of action and evaluate their therapeutic activity. The next award is a Rising Star Award for Dr. Stefan Glogler, who has been nominated by the University of Texas Southwest Medical Center for appointment as a professor in the Advanced Imaging Research Center and membership in the Simmons Comprehensive Cancer Center. Dr. Glogler is an internationally recognized leader in the field of developing hyperpolarized MRI contrast agents and developing new technology for creating polarized contrast agents and molecular imaging technologies for cancer imaging. And what he is proposing to do is to use a multispectral approach, so using multiple contrast imaging agents to probe multiple aspects of metabolism simultaneously to allow him to distinguish different phenotypes of brain cancer. And this would be used for diagnosis, but also to visualize changes that are induced by cancer therapy or progression. He will begin with brain cancer, but plans to extend this work to breast and prostate cancer as well. Moving now to our last slate of 3 tenure track faculty member recruits. The first of these is Dr. Kevin Mark, who has been nominated by the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. Dr. Mark is a very well-trained cancer biologist who has a strong background in stem cell biology, gene regulation, and protein chemistry. Now, during his training, he discovered a novel function for a ubiquitin ligase, and ubiquitin ligases add ubiquitin molecules to proteins which target them for degradation. He found that this ligase has a unique function that is involved in the maintenance of stem cell pluripotency. And this function is hijacked by tumor cells. And what happens is that instead of degrading an oncogenic transcription factor, the levels of transcription factors become quite elevated, and they create an increased pool of stem cells that are at risk of undergoing malignant transformation. So he's now proposing to determine how ubiquitination regulates the multi-subunit protein complexes that are involved in gene expression and other critical functions, but also to develop small molecule modulators, particularly degraders, that would for this ubiquitin ligase that could have future potential as cancer therapeutics. The next candidate is Dr. Yu Luan, who's been nominated by the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio and for a CPRIT first-time tenure-track faculty member award and appointment as an assistant professor in the Department of Cell Systems and Anatomy. Dr. Luan is an expert in computational analysis of large data sets as well as in programming and machine learning. And during the course of his training, he has made an important finding. That is, he's identified a genetic variant in the GATA3 transcription factor gene. And he believes that this variant may account for the high incidence of acute lymphoblastic leukemia in Hispanics, and particularly Hispanic children. And he has demonstrated that this functional variant in the GATA3 gene creates increased levels of this transcription factor, which is a master regulator of blood cell development. And he is proposing to apply state-of-the-art genomics to delineate the mechanisms by which GATA3, which functions to reorganize the chromatin, by which this increased level of genome-wide rewiring of chromatin and the gene regulatory landscape alters the function of hematopoietic stem cells and increases the risk of transformation to ALL. The last candidate is Dr. Vishnu Dilip, who is being recruited to the Baylor College of Medicine and will be appointed as an assistant professor in the Department of Molecular and Human Genetics and a member of the Dan L. Duncan Comprehensive Cancer Center. Dr. Dilip is has expertise in cancer genomics and neuroscience. And I should mention that he has already been recognized for his accomplishments by having been awarded the NIH prestigious K99R00 Pathway to Independence Award. Now he is proposing to combine cancer genomics and neuroscience to elucidate the causes of chemobrain, which, as you know, chemotherapy-induced cognitive impairment is a common consequence of cancer treatments. And he hypothesizes that DNA damage to neuronal cells causes widespread changes in the genome and epigenome of brain cells. And this triggers a cell extrinsic cell inflammatory environment, which alters the function of glial cells. And that it may be one of the mechanisms contributing to chemobrain. And so he proposes to combine this expertise to look at the effects of chemotherapy on the genome, the epigenome, and the 3D genome organization in brain cells. Of course, the long-term goal is to develop therapeutic interventions. Okay, I'd like to move on to the next slide and present the slate of individual investigator research awards, the RFAs, that academic research is proposing for fiscal year 25.1. We have our 5 IRA awards that you're very familiar with, the Individual Investigator Research Award and the Targeted Awards, the Award for Computational Systems Biology, the Award for Cancer in Children and Adolescents. The next 2 awards you'll see on the next slide, the Individual Investigator Award for Prevention and Early Detection, and the IRA Award for Clinical Trials. This year, we are proposing 2 additional awards, and the first of these is a new targeted IRA. And this is an IRA focused on early onset cancers. And the goal is to support innovative research projects that will significantly advance our knowledge of the etiology, prevention, and cancer biology and treatment of early onset cancers. And just a few words of background. The incidence of cancers of many organ types diagnosed in adults less than 50 years of age has been rising in many parts of the world since the 1990s. And evidence suggests that screening is a part of the increased screening, but that there is an etiological role for risk factor exposures in early life and young adulthood, although the specific effects of individual exposures are not well understood. And just to remind you that the early life exposures and our lifestyles have changed substantially since around the 1950s. And some of the increasing temporal trends that have been looked at and implicated in this increasing rise of cancer in young adults is, things like obesity, sedentary behavior, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, diet such as Western diet, sugar sweetened beverages, red meat, etc., alcohol intake, and things like the increased incidence of inflammatory bowel disease. I think this is an opportune time for CPRIT to address an unmet need and a knowledge gap in our understanding of what is causing this changing trend and increasing the incidence of early onset cancers, and hope that this will be an important contribution to public health ultimately in Texas. The second is the Collaborative Action Program to reduce liver cancer mortality in Texas. And this is a competitive renewal for the Collaborative Action Center. And this goal is to support a competitive renewal of a single collaborative action center whose function will be to promote interactions and collaboration across individual research awards studying hepatocellular cancer, and to educate healthcare providers and the public on best practices, and inform public health officials and influence where possible public health care policy to improve prevention, detection, and treatment of hepatocellular cancer. So that completes my remarks. I am happy to address any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Dr. LeBeau. That was a lot today. Well done. Okay, so we're going to take some questions now, either on the 46 grant recommendations or the 7 proposed 2025 RFAs. I do have a question for you on the Early Onset Cancers Individual Investigator Research Award. In the alternate media, and I say that in quotations, there seems to be some chatter regarding COVID-19 as an exposure that potentially could modulate cancer. Do you have any information, or are you anticipating anyone in this RFA that may be looking at that?
Do you mean the
Either the vaccine or
response
the
to
disease?
cancer care, the outcomes to cancer care for patients?
Or has that
or
experience
risk factor as a risk factor?
as a risk factor?
I have not seen a lot in the literature, but I will take that up and investigate that.
Thank you. Any further questions for Dr. LeBeau? Yes, Dr. Rice.
Just a comment. So thank you so much for the presentation as usual. And I just want to make the comment that it's thrilling to see the awards, the investigator awards, but it almost leaves me breathless to see the exciting recruitment awards. And I see the scoring is 1 and 1.2, 1.4. It's a very wonderful, very well scored. The lower is better for those that may not remember. Thank you and congratulations on that recruiting class. It looks fantastic. And again, I'm almost breathless when I look at the excitement that's going to be forthcoming from all that work.
Yeah. Well, let me just comment. Our Scientific Review Council, in reviewing the recruitment awards, has been commenting almost every review cycle that the nominations are getting better and better, and that it's getting harder and harder to score and select a cutoff for recommendation because of the high quality.
That's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Yes, it's a good thing.
Dr. Rosenberg.
Thank you, Michelle. One quick question. You mentioned in the recruitment awards that one person was withdrawn by the institution. And I was wondering if you could expand on that at all?
The individual elected to take another position elsewhere.
Say it again. I can't-
Oh, sorry. The individual elected to take another position elsewhere.
Dr. Hernandez.
Nice presentation. Just for clarity, how do you guys mathematically come up with these numbers that are being delineated for these RFAs and grants? Because I noticed that when we, it was said before my time, but when we recruit somebody, or those numbers seem to be much larger in funding for one person. And some of these trials impact quite a bit of people. Yet they only for 400,000 a year or 300,000 a year. How do you guys do the math? Justify? I mean, scientists are important. We need them, but all these other, they're amazing things that you're doing. But I'm just curious, how did you guys come up with these numbers
For the IRIS.
for the fund? Yeah.
It's based on experience about what the amount of personnel and laboratory expenses for for typical projects in the laboratory. We also have many years of monitoring expenditures. So we know how people are spending their funds.
Sure.
So we know, for example, that COVID, we took a big hit or a delay in people being able to expend their funds during COVID. Afterwards, they were able to catch up a little bit. But we can see patterns and trends of how people are spending their funds, but it's also just based on knowledge and experience.
I see.
And it's relatively, our awards are a bit more generous than the National Institutes of Health.
Are they? But they're also generous when we recruit people as well. I mean, are they?
Correct.
Right? So that's not
Correct.
really, yeah. The measuring stick to me is, I mean, 350,000, I mean, most, I don't know where you guys live, but a lot of homes are, I mean, that's a home, right? I mean, and you're asking these institutions or individuals, investigators to work with 400 grand or 300 grand. I mean, that even from a practice standpoint, when we do research in our clinics and you bring in personnel, I'm just saying the reality is we bring those kind of people into our office and we can hire staff and get the people enrolled. It takes a lot more. So I'm just curious how successful they're going to be with this kind of funding. I'm sure you have supporting data for it, but I'm just curious how we got those numbers because we want them to be successful, right?
Well, I'll be happy to go over kind of a typical grant budget and kind of the personnel that's normally included on a RO1 or IRA type budget.
Yes.
It usually includes some level of support for the PI and sometimes a co-investigator, as well as several individuals who would be working full-time on the project. You may have significant laboratory charges as well. For example, doing high throughput screening for drug screening or some genomics analysis is really quite costly. So there are those expenses as well.
Yes.
The clinical trials, IRA has a higher budget in part because of the cost of clinical trials, but we also recognize that the $400,000 that we offer a year is really only a small part of the cost of a total clinical trial.
Right. And so that was my point. I'm very delighted to see this and congratulations, Wayne, for all these things that you're doing together. But I know, so if you're going to do it, I mean, I'm not saying you're not doing it right, but if you're going to do it right, right? I mean, either go all in or don't do it. Because otherwise you're only going to get half of what we really want or a third of the data we want. But regardless, they're great projects. I mean, great ask on your part. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, but I understand your point. Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. LeBeau? Oh, that's much better. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. LeBeau. Excellent presentation. All right, first we will take up the award recommendations and then we will vote on 7 proposed RFAs. Mr. Burgess has certified compliance for an academic research award process. It is my understanding that Dr. Rosenfeld has reported a conflict of interest in one academic research application we will consider today. Are there any other conflicts of interest that have not been reported? Members, you have the list of applications and grant amounts recommended by the PIC for the Academic Research Grant Awards. We will approve the PIC's recommendation if 2/3 of the Oversight Committee members agree. There are 8 academic research award slates constituting 46 grant recommendations. Rather than taking a separate vote on each grant mechanism, I'll ask for a vote to approve all the slates. If a member wants to consider one or more award recommendations separately from the vote on all the slates, please make a motion to do so now. First, we will take up RP 240291. I will entertain a motion to approve the PIC's award recommendation for RP 240291.
So moved.
Second. Hearing approval from at least 2/3 of the members, the motion carries. I will note for the record that Dr. Rosenfeld did not vote on this recommendation. I will entertain a motion to approve the PIC's remaining 45 recommendations for the following academic research grant award mechanisms: Individual Investigator Research Awards, Individual Investigator Research Awards for Childhood and Adolescent Cancers, Individual Investigator Research Awards for Computational Systems Biology of Cancer, Individual Investigator Research Awards for Clinical Translation, Individual Investigator Research Awards for Prevention and Early Detection, Recruitment of Established Investigators, Recruitment of Rising Stars, Recruitment of First-Time Tenure-Track Faculty Members. So moved.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing approval from at least 2/3 of the members, the motion carries. I will entertain a motion delegating contract negotiation authority to the CEO and CPRIT staff to authorize the CEO to sign the contracts on behalf of CPRIT.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Members, closing out our action items for the academic research program, I will entertain a motion approving the 7 proposed FY 2025 RFAs as presented by Dr. LeBeau.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. LeBeau. Moving on to item 8. The chair recognizes Chief Prevention Officer Ramona Magid to provide the Chief Prevention Officer's report and present the PICS Prevention Award recommendation. Good morning.
Good morning, members. The prevention program update is behind tab 5 in your booklet, and I'll just highlight the one item of the RFAs for cycle 1 in FY 2025 were just released February 9th. So we're anticipating receiving lots of applications, and I will present those recommendations to you in November of 2024. I will now present the award recommendations from the PIC. The award descriptions begin on page 45 of the proposed awards booklet. The PIC is recommending 12 prevention projects totaling close to $26 million, 7 cancer screening and early detection projects, and 5 primary prevention of cancer projects. All of the projects address multiple prevention priorities. 5 of the cancer screening and early detection projects are expansions of previously funded projects, and 2 are new projects. All of the projects are comprehensive, multi-component projects that include outreach, education, navigation, screening, and diagnostic testing and navigation into treatment as needed. Next slide. The first project is a cervical cancer screening project from MD Anderson that proposes to serve patients in 2 safety net health systems, one in Houston and one in the Rio Grande Valley. This project includes pioneering the implementation of primary HPV testing with self-sampling once self-sampling is approved by the FDA, which is projected to happen between March and June of this year. The next project is a lung cancer screening and smoking cessation project from the University of Texas at Austin that proposes to serve patients in 2 federally qualified health clinic systems, each with multiple sites. And the counties are Bastrop, Bell, Travis, and Williamson counties. The CPRIT project is from the Methodist Hospital Research Institute. The Institute has received CPRIT funding for academic research projects, but this is a new institution for the prevention program. This project proposes to offer breast, cervical, colorectal, and liver cancer screening and diagnostic services in 3 communities in the Houston area in partnership with Legacy Community Health, which is a very large federally qualified health center clinic system. The project from Baylor College of Medicine plans to expand their successful colorectal cancer screening and diagnostics project by adding breast cancer screening and diagnostics to serve the patients of Baylor College of Medicine and Chi St. Luke. A navigation workbench integrated into the electronic health record will better coordinate navigation and follow-up and identify gaps in care. Next slide. The next project is an integrated mobile mammography screening and genetic evaluation services project from MD Anderson, serving women in 23 FQHC clinics in Harris County and 4 surrounding counties. The genetics program will provide genetic risk assessment, testing, and counseling services. Of note, MD Anderson will commit up to an additional $1 million for these services. UT Southwestern proposes to expand their colorectal cancer screening and diagnostics program using mailed FIT kits to cover 67 counties. Partnerships include community health clinics and federally qualified health clinics, and the public may self-enroll in the program through a dedicated 800 number if they're not part of a medical system currently. The last project in this slate is an expansion of the breast cancer screening program at UT Austin that will serve 9 Central Texas counties: Bastrop, Bell, Burnett, Caldwell, Fayette, Hayes, Lee, Travis, and Williamson counties. The project will continue to offer mobile mammography, but will also add multiple fixed testing sites to better serve the communities. I will now present the 5 recommended projects in the primary prevention of cancer slate. All of these projects are expansion projects. The first project proposes to provide HPV vaccination to children 9 to 17 years of age who are seen in the UTMB clinics in 25 counties. Provider education and training, same-day appointments, and standing orders are major components of this project. UT Health Houston proposes to expand their adolescent vaccination program to a large safety net clinic system in 4 counties, including Harris County. Some strategies include immunization champions, provider assessment and feedback, and patient reminder and recall systems. The next project from MD Anderson proposes to expand their tobacco use intervention program to agencies serving women with behavioral health needs. The project will disseminate and implement the successful CPRIT-funded Taking Texas Tobacco-Free program and could potentially be available in all Texas counties if agencies opt into the program. This Texas Tech Health Sciences Center at El Paso project proposes to provide vaccines to residents of El Paso County and the 4 surrounding counties through a large collaborative network of community organizations, faith-based groups, schools, and healthcare providers. The project plans to partner with pharmacy providers for service delivery in rural counties. The last project is from UT Health Science Center at Houston. The All for Them expansion project will focus on providing HPV vaccinations for youth living in medically underserved areas in 4 public school districts in Harris, Chambers, and Tarrant County. The clinics, held both in schools and in the community, are open to all middle and high school students and their siblings. School nurse education is a major focus of this project. That's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Ms. Maggot. Are there any questions for the prevention? Dr. Rice.
Matt Ramona, thank you so much for that presentation. You may not have this at your fingertip, and you mentioned it as you went along, but I wondered in this group of prevention slates, how many counties were touched? And you said one was 4 or 5 and one was 9. And I know I'm not asking you to do the math right now.
Right.
Maybe in future reports, it might be helpful
Okay.
to say, for our slates funding this session, whatever, 59 counties are touched by it, just so we'd have a sense of how broadly you're
Great
touching, which I know
suggestion.
we are.
Well, you can also go out onto our spiffy new annual report and get that information.
And it's on the website under
on
the
the web?
prevention program page.
There's a
This
map.
one will be easy because if the Taking Tobacco, Texas Tobacco Free is 254 counties, I can say.
Thank you for that.
All of them.
But I will take that suggestion and do it in the future. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Margot.
Ramona, do we know how many, what's the approximate percentage of population in Texas that still smokes? We know, adult population?
It's like 12%.
Lower.
It's low, but that's smoking. That's not vaping. That's,
Well, what we're trying to prevent, smoking cessation, and tobacco cessation, whatever you want to call it.
well, it's very different approaches. Tobacco
I understand, but
cessation
what
versus,
percent, what?
I don't
do you
know.
have any
the
idea
com-
what the population is for this?
Well, 12% of 30 million.
Okay.
I'll let Dr. Rice do the math.
Any other questions? Dr. Hernandez.
On the last proposal you have for all 4 of them, that's really for those of us in healthcare, that's really a difficult conversation and a difficult topic to cover. How are they proposing to get past those barriers? Because as healthcare providers, we always get pushback from the families, it's the parents, really is what it is. And so, or the pediatricians or family care doctors that don't don't believe in it or they're anti-vacciner. So I like it. I'm just curious, what was in the application? how they
They've
gonna
been
get it?
very successful in their previous projects. They've been previously funded by CPRIT.
Yes,
And they concentrate on, that they don't call out HPV vaccine, they group it with all the vaccines. These are the vaccines that your child should get
Should-
at age. And then they do have, there's a lot of materials that NCI, CDC have developed about vaccine hesitancy and
Right.
how to, and the questions you should ask and
sure.
and the answers you should give the parents. So they use all of those techniques.
Well, I applaud you. That's a difficult conversation.
It is.
Glad You guys.
It is, but they've been extremely successful in their school district.
Yes, ma'am.
That convincing the school nurses to become champions is one of the major elements of this project. They
Yes,
work with them first and then they become because they have the relationship
That's
with the
right.
parents. So they go that route, which seems to work very well.
Good. And then the other one was the one with Baylor College of Medicine for the reducing racial ethnic disparities on breast cancer screening. That one, there are 3 points here. Number one is, and again, the people who are in healthcare will know what I'm talking about. When it comes to their EHR, when it comes to their navigator, as they call it, those are all inherently built into any health system. I mean, if I own a facility or a health system, I'm responsible for all my electronic medical records, EHRs, everything, and we data mine all that for our clinics and for our patients. So that's something they should be doing already. And second of all, we always have navigators, just so you know, we do for the majority of our disease, because we do lose contact with patients. They don't follow up, but that's their responsibility as well. And the third one, I fully support what you're saying, but you might in the future, going forward, when you talk to the applicants, just remind them that that's the number one and the number two. That's what they already do in their health systems.
It is, but the navigation is at a different level here. It's like they go with the patient. It's a personal navigation system
Yes,
that
ma'am.
doesn't always happen in large FQHCs and
Right.
smaller. Yes, it's required, but the level of care and navigation is not the same throughout all the clinic systems. So this is very detailed and just has been successful in helping people come back, or if they do have a incorrect specimen collection, the navigator works with them individually. I don't know that happens at your facility, but it does not happen at facilities across the board in Texas by any means.
Sure. But if they're going to treat those type of patients, navigate, it's nothing new. We've been doing.
No,
it
it's
else.
not new.
Yeah,
It
but
is not new.
all I'm saying is that the cost should be their cost. And if they want to care for those type of patients, they should be doing that, because that's standard of care. They should be doing that to begin with. That's all. So anyways, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Dr. Rosenfeld?
Thank you. The preventive program's been going on for a number of years now. Is there any way to estimate how many cancers have been prevented by CPRIT interventions?
It's not an estimate. We keep records of that, and it is, I want to say close to 6,000, but that's cancers detected.
You're talking cancer.
And then the precursors are in I can get you the number. I don't have it right off the tip of my tongue, but it is a lot. We've done and then even before the precursors, if you have an abnormal, say, cervical cancer screening finding, they'll do the LEAP and the colposcopy and all of that, and we keep records of all the diagnostic testing as well. So
Because besides preventing cancer, there's also a potential huge savings to the healthcare system by preventing the cancer as opposed to
Yeah.
treating.
correct.
Mhm.
I will send out that number.
If I may,
Dr. Patel?
the Perryman report has got all of that information in it. So it's available for us, again, online, correctly.
It's also on our secret website.
Oh,
The
Thank you.
Spiffy Perryman.
good to know.
Thank you very much. Turning to the prevention award recommendations, Mr. Burgess has certified compliance of the prevention award process. It's my understanding that no members have reported any conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest that have not been reported? Hearing none, members, you have the applications and grant amounts recommended by the PIC for prevention grant awards. The Oversight Committee will approve the PIC's recommendations if 2/3 of the members agree. We will consider the two slates together unless an Oversight Committee member wishes to take up any recommendations separately. I will entertain a motion to approve the PIC's 12 grant recommendations for the cancer screening and early detection and the primary prevention of cancer mechanisms.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing approval from at least 2/3 of the members, the motion carries. I will entertain a motion delegating contract negotiation authority to the CEO and the CPRIT staff and to authorize the CEO to sign the contracts on behalf of CPRIT.
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Magan. We'll now move on to item 9. The chair recognizes Chief Product Development Officer, Dr. Ken Smith, to provide the Chief Product Development Officer's report and present the proposed FY 2025 request for applications.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So last when we met, product development is at the end of its first cycle, the 24-1 cycle, and during that cycle, $55 million was granted. Okay. All right, so 55 million was dispensed, and so it left about 17 to 20 million dollars. And so what we decided to do, we did a couple different things. One is because of the limited amount of money available, we decided to have seeds be able to apply in this next 24-2 cycle. But we also didn't want to limit it to just seeds. So we included the other 3 RFAs, the device and diagnostics, the new technologies and therapeutic, but we limited the amount to 5 million. So we opened up the portal and basically got 63 applications within 10 days. So we had it open from Monday morning to the following Monday evening and had 63. So again, a large number and as you might imagine, and you can see in my in tab 6 in my report, about half of them were seeds, which is not unexpected, but we still got a lot of the other type as well at 5 million. So 63 and 3 were withdrawn for technical reasons. And so what we did different this time, and I think this will continue into the future, just trying to optimize our process and streamline our process, both for CPRIT and for our applicants. Instead of having like a temporal cutoff where we wouldn't review certain applications because they came after a certain time and we had already promised people full application review, what we did is we actually reviewed all 60. So we had 8 panels of 4 individuals. Normally the PDRC would be the only people doing preliminary review, but because we expanded it to 8 panels, we also included other peer reviewers outside the PDRC, and they reviewed every one of these applications, all 60. So what we did then was each of the panels had about 7 or 8 applications to review. They rank ordered them. We took the top 2 from each of those panels, put them into a panel of 16, rank ordered them. And what has happened previously, right, because of this temporal nature of how we used to cut it off, we had 5 companies previously from the 24-1. And this process that we're going to do now should eliminate any kind of companies moving into the future, so that we have, when we finish a cycle, it's finished and we start over again without anything left behind from the previous cycle. So this should be the last time. So we had 5 companies from the previous cycle that are part of this review, and we took the top 11 of the 16 that came out of the 8 panels. And so we had 16 companies that were invited to present full applications. That cutoff to put your full application in was last Tuesday, I guess the 13th, and 15 out of the 16 applied. So we have 15 applications now that are full applications. They're going to the review panels. They're not the same review panels that did the preliminary application. As we've said before, we try and tailor each of these panels to the application. And we continue to get, and I can't say enough about Abria and Michelle continuing to bring in new peer reviewers. We had 5 more added to our pool this last time. I think Abria just got a biostatistician. We're really trying to expand their field of expertise so that we can accommodate, you know, all the new applications we get, because some of them are very sophisticated and not necessarily right in the typical therapeutic way, but, you know, AI and things along those lines. So anyway, we'll have those panels do the review, and the process will remain the same from then on, right? So the preliminary application way we did it was different, but moving forward, the full review still goes. They get the full review, the peer reviewers. They have questions. They give the questions to the chair. The chair sends the questions to the company. The company addresses those questions. And in fact, the way we do it now during the full application review, it really is almost all about the questions. It's not much about a presentation. They really barrow down to what the nitty gritty is for each of these companies. And they could spend, you know, 2 hours just going through all that part of the application. I think that's also improve the process, because you don't spend a half hour of someone telling you what you already know. You basically get right to the heart of it, and they answer questions. So that'll remain the same. X number of companies will get to due diligence, and the due diligence goes forward and then goes to the pick recommendation, and that all remains the same. So that's kind of where we are now. But the idea is basically, like I said, to optimize it and to make sure that, you know, when we're done a cycle, we're not carrying anything over again. So I think that'll work for CPRIT and for the applicants as well. All right, so that's where we are right there. The couple other things to discuss is, we talked about the resource guide before. We continue to expand the resource guide and new companies and economic development areas and things along those lines. So that continues apace. And again, you know, would like to, you know, compliment Abria and Maggie and Michelle for doing that. And then the other big thing that we're working on right now, I think, and it's kind of, you know, been in the background, because when Tracy left, she was kind of the champion of the IP database. And so now we have a new champion. Michelle Dewan is now head of the IP database. And the good news is, since, I guess, September, we got the contract in place with a company called Wellspring that uses a software system called Sophia, which is, I think, used fairly widely. And by the end of January, just this past month, all the data that we had collected has been migrated to the database. Again, that just really populating a lot of the fields. We don't have the background information like the licenses and the invention disclosures and some of those things, but they're going to be populated too, hopefully by the end of this month. And so then we'll be able to take, it's going to take a little longer on the process because we got to go back and verify everything, right? So, you know, some patents have, you know, 8 numbers, 7 numbers. We got to make sure the patent numbers are right. We got to make sure that the invention disclosure numbers are right and everything matches up. So that'll take some time working with the institutions. But the good news is that the institutions now, we're going to have a portal for them to basically update the data. So in the past, it used to actually come into CPRIT. It used to come to Kristen mostly, and she would never delete anything in her email. So she would always go over the maximum amount that she was entitled to. And so now the institutions will be able to input the data. And that's a good thing. We'll still have to be vigilant and actually check with it. So on our side, we got to make sure that it's accurate. But I'm hopeful by summertime that it'll be functional. And I've been on it a couple times and gone through 1 or 2 of the trainings, and it's quite extensive. There are quite a few fields. And so I don't know exactly what reports we'll be able to run from the get-go, and whether, you know, when we talk about this in more detail, there may be reports that you would like to see, and perhaps we can have them done, but we'll have to see what all its functionalities is. But at least we're making some progress. And I'd like to thank everybody associated with that for doing a really yeoman's work, because it's just a lot of data. There's like, I think there's 280 license agreements. So just starting from there, right? And this is really kind of an initiative. The product development side of it, we still have to kind of fill out. This is all really academic research. All this information comes from that. So anyway, the final thing I guess I have is that we have going to have obviously a 25.1 cycle, which it's hard to believe that starts soon. We haven't finished 24.2, but in that process, we have to, I guess, approve the RFAs. So the RFAs will remain essentially the same. There'll be a therapeutic one, there'll be a seed, there'll be device and diagnostics, and there'll be this new technology. So that's my report.
Excellent work. Thank you so much. Any questions for Dr.
I have-
Smith? Mr. Margot?
The activity level is significant compared to a few years ago. We thought part of that might be because you've simplified the application process or the RFP process for them very much. Do you think that's the real driver, or is there much more activity going on in our state related to this technology and product development and et cetera in comparison? Because this is just, I mean, I remember we had very few applicants a few years ago, and now you're inundated and overflowing.
Yeah, I think it's a variety of things. I think that CPRIT's done a pretty good job of going out and recruiting and we've been at bio, we've been at different, meetings. That's one thing. I think the process actually has been streamlined and optimized, and I think that helps. And again, I think the final driver, and not an insignificant one, is the difficulty in raising money. We still see that, and the concern that I have is when I talk to people, I think a lot of people were out of JP Morgan and stuff like that. You see very, very early stage companies who really have no investors. They seem to get some money if they've got a novel idea. And then all the way at the other end, where you're into phase 3, you've got a ton of clinical data, and you look like you're going to get approved, they get money. Those people in between doing phase 1 and phase 2, it's still problematic to raise money. And, we have our own companies at CPRIT where, again, we can see that they're trying to raise money and they're doing all the right things, but it's still pretty dry. People I talk to say by the end of this year, hopefully things will start to loosen up a little bit, but that remains to be seen. That's speculative.
Mr. McGovern?
Thank you very much. First of all, I commend you and your staff for improving the process. I think it will result in a much improved grant mechanism. I have a question though. If you were one of the 5 holdover companies, what will be the time period from your initial application, first piece of paper you send to CPRIT, until you actually get the money, assuming that they are, and then along with that, what will it be in the future when we clear out the backlog?
Yeah, so for those companies, it'd probably be, let's see, if the money is dispensed in May, then it'll probably have been, let's say, 9 months. But we allow them to, the other thing that one benefit actually in if there is one to going forward, we allow them to update their application so that if they got new clinical data in, or if they've met with the FDA, they can put that into their application. So it may bolster their application actually. And one of the things that I tell people too is I don't look at this process as a one-off, right? Which means it doesn't, if you apply and you don't get an app or award the first time, it doesn't really stop you from, resubmitting. And so I try and look at it as a 2-year kind of cycle, if you will, rather than just, okay, we didn't get it, now we're moving on. They really do have the opportunity, and we give them feedback to try and, help them in their application process to do a better job, or to explain something better, or even give them time to get new data, because it's a lot data driven, right? And so some people apply too soon. And we just kind of let them know that you don't have enough data really to satisfy us that the proof of concept is there. So I try and look at it more of a, 2-3 year process. And so the second part of your question is that, yeah, the cutoff basically now is that you'll know that if you get, an application, you're going to get reviewed, and that you won't have to wait some period of time.
But the total time, assuming you're a successful company and first time applicant, the time period involves still 9 months?
No.
Or?
So for them, the idea that raises a good point is that, we've been negotiating some of the contracts. And what we do now is we actually, before they're actually awarded, we get them to basically revise their budget. We also get the IP people on board earlier now too. So I would say 6 months is about the time frame.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Very good. Any other questions? I think Dr. Rosenfeld was first, then Dr. Patel.
Just a couple quick comments. Thank you. Just a couple quick comments. I've looked at the resource guide. It's looking very good. I just wanted to congratulate you. I can't wait till it expands out. There's some sections where I guess we need people to list themselves. But companies will find that very helpful because there's kind of the image that a lot of these things are not available in Texas. And you look at the resource guide and you go, oh, yeah, there is people who do this in Texas.
Yeah, and I think it kind of builds on itself as people see it. But people, we're not in this. We want to be in this. So I think it'll continue to expand. So thank you.
And the other is the patent database. You guys have been working on this probably for years. And it's a huge undertaking. And I just want to congratulate you on that because it's going to be very helpful for people at all stages, whether you're talking about licensing or whatever. So this is great work.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good. Dr. Patel.
Thank you, Ken. Looking at 24-2, 4 of the companies are out of state. Does this mean that they will be relocating? And the follow-up question is this, is that since the inception of your division or section, how many companies have relocated to the state of Texas? Because that does add significantly to the infrastructure here.
Yeah, I don't know that number off the top of my head. One of the things that we've been doing is kind of getting all that information together, and that'll be presented to you probably in the next cycle, maybe, or the one after that. But all that data, Maria's working on a project that will basically give you, and some of you have heard it through either, been on PDAC or been on the subcommittee. But we'll have that information. Again, we want to make sure the information is accurate. And one of the things that I've told Bria that I want to have is that we have to list our assumptions. So if you want to value a company in something, you have to tell in that data is going to say how we got to that evaluation so that you're not just saying, well, you pulled it out of the sky. So all of this needs to be vetted and reviewed so that we can finally present it in a cogent and accurate form.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. Members, I will entertain a motion approving the 4 proposed FY 2025 RFAs as presented by Dr. Smith.
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye. Oh, sorry. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you again. We'll move on to item 10. The chair recognizes Mr. Roberts to present his appointments to the Scientific Research and Prevention Program Committees.
Thank you. I'll try not to choke up on this report. I have appointed 5 experts to CPRIT's Product Development Peer Review Committee. State law requires the Oversight Committee to approve these appointments. At their February 8th meeting, the Board Governance Subcommittee reviewed the appointees to the panels and recommends approval by the Oversight Committee. Also, the Product Development Subcommittee has reviewed these appointments as well without objection. I request approval.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Roberts? Is there a motion to approve the CEO's 5 appointments to the Scientific Research and Prevention Program Committees?
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is item 11. Members, the next presentations will be from 2 of the Oversight Committee's advisory committees. From a time management perspective, we expect each presentation and question and answer period to take 30 minutes. Please remember to keep your microphone closed. First, we have the Advisory Committee on Childhood Cancer Prevention. Dr. LeBeau, please introduce Dr. Richard Gorlick and Dr. Will Parsons, who will provide the Advisory Committee on Childhood Cancer's annual report.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to introduce Drs. Richard Gorlick and Dr. Will Parsons, who are the chair and vice chair of the Advisory Committee on Childhood Cancers, both of whom are with us today in person. You have met Dr. Gorlick on several occasions virtually. He is a professor, division head, and the H. Grant Taylor, MD, W.W. Suto, MD, and Margaret P. Sullivan, MD, Distinguished Chair of the Division of Pediatrics at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center, Children's Cancer Hospital in Houston. He also serves as interim chair of Sarcoma Medical Oncology. Dr. Gorlick earned his medical degree from the State University of New York, Downstate Medical Center, and completed his residency at Columbia Presbyterian and his fellowship in pediatric hematology and oncology at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. For over 20 years, he has focused his research and clinical efforts on sarcomas, and he currently serves as the director of the Pediatric Sarcoma Research Laboratory at MD Anderson, where his lab focuses on targeted therapies for childhood cancers and understanding the mechanisms behind the development and progression of bone cancer or osteosarcoma. Dr. Will Parsons is a board-certified pediatric oncologist, professor of pediatrics at Baylor College of Medicine, and the deputy director of Texas Children's Cancer and Hematology Center at Baylor College of Medicine. Dr. Parsons' work has been instrumental in characterizing the genetic landscape of a variety of pediatric and adult cancers, including the first identification of IDH1 and 2 as critical oncogenes in glioma. His current research primarily focuses on the clinical application of genomic technologies in pediatric cancer care. He has a particular interest in the development and evaluation of molecularly targeted therapies and currently serves as the study chair for the NCI-COG Pediatric Match-Top Trial, which many of you know is the first nationwide precision oncology trial for children with cancer. So I'd like to welcome Drs. Gorlick and Parsons.
Let me start off by saying thank you, Dr. LeBeau, for that very kind introduction. Thank you to the leadership of CPRIT for allowing Dr. Parsons and I to present today. Thank you all for listening. I'm going to make one apology to start off. The slight apology is the slides that I'm going to present don't exactly match what's in your book. Cognizant of time, the biggest change is we had to shorten the number of slides, trying to sort of make the amount of time close to what was allotted. So we will do the best we can to sort of meet the needs. So today what we're going to do is both of us are going to present. I'm going to start off and then Dr. Parsons is going to end the talk. I'm going to talk briefly about childhood cancer in Texas, a little bit of a review. We're going to talk about summary of pediatric achievements by CPRIT. We're going to talk about ongoing steps by the advisory committee. We're going to talk about strategy and then summary next steps. Like I said, I'm going to start and Dr. Parsons is going to do the latter half of the talk. So talking about the problem of childhood cancer, in the United States, there's about 15,000 children ages 0 to 19 diagnosed with cancer each year. Compared to adult cancer, this is rare. But this still means, despite the advances we've made in the treatment of childhood cancer, this remains the #1 cause of death from disease in children age 1 to 12. So this is a significant problem with children generally healthy. Very few drugs have been approved specifically for pediatrics, and very few have had a development path through pediatrics. And as more and more kids survive, survivors themselves provide a number of unique medical challenges that challenge expertise in caring for this population of patients who have a myriad of late effects. Childhood cancer is a big problem in Texas because Texas is big. Texas has the same incidence of childhood cancer as the United States. So with the second largest population of people, it has, 10% of the population of the United States. So that means for us, 1,500 cases of childhood cancer in Texas each year. It's still, like the rest of the United States, it's the #1 cause of disease-related death in kids 1 to 12. And again, this gives you the incidence. And making the problem even bigger is I want to talk a little bit today about adolescents and young adults. Adolescents and young adults defined as kids who are 15 to 39 are patients who typically fall through the cracks of medical systems versus children's hospitals. Adolescents never feel at home being cared for in environments where babies are taken care of. They don't really feel that comfortable being treated in settings with much older patients. So a number of unique challenges, a number of developmental associated changes, meaning we all know teenagers, it's a unique time of life, young adulthood, unique time of life, makes medical compliance challenging, diagnosis challenging. And what makes it even more challenging is certain cancers within this particular age population, particularly things like colorectal cancer, are continuing to rise in incidence with it unclear why that it's the case. And a number of these are relatively, for pediatrics, poorer prognosis malignancies. One of the other things that's true about Texas is a young state. So I started with the number of kids with cancer in this state is 10%, but it's only going to grow as the number of children in the United States, in Texas, keep migrating here. It's the second youngest state of the nation. And if you look at sort of the population of the younger kids, it's more than many states combined. Texas is doing a lot of great things at a national level. So while we're Texas oriented, Texas is leading the nation in a lot of ways. A lot of the national initiatives that have already been mentioned, things like MATCH, but also Pivot, the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative, are being led by folks within Texas. And CPRIT has been a big part of that. So just summarizing the background, incidence rates for childhood cancer in Texas are comparable. Childhood and AYA cancers aren't added into those numbers, make it bigger. And these are an underreported, understudied group and a great need. We're the second youngest state of the nation. And in many areas, we're leading the nation. So CPRIT has already had a track record of major accomplishments. They have funded numerous areas of childhood cancer research through individual research awards. They've supported core facilities, and one of the things that's really helped, and we'll come back to, is within core facilities, institutions are allowed to put in an additional application if it's focused on pediatrics or population health in the most recent round. That mechanism has been used previously and ensured that pediatrics is paid attention to. Some of the new childhood cancer researchers have been recruited, are focused on pediatrics, and these are two individuals coming to Baylor. So again, a lot of the initiatives that exist are focused on helping pediatrics specifically. What this means is there's been a lot of impact, a lot of funding, a lot of publications, a lot of clinical trials, a lot of patients impacted, and really we're incredibly appreciative for the support that's provided. Getting specifically at some of the impact of the CPRIT funding mechanisms, there's been large numbers of awards, publications, shareable cancer models, capacity for data storage. And clearly, we're very supportive of this continued approach of additional applications focused on pediatrics. And again, some of the members of the advisory committee wanted to give us specific examples. And in neuroblastoma, which is a pediatric-specific malignancy, there are a number of specific examples of CPRIT awards that have definitively led to national efforts extending what was done in Texas through the country through the Children's Oncology Group. At the same time, I don't want to say pediatrics has solved all the problems. You know, there are malignancies where we've done really wonderfully. Leukemia, you know, historically, you know, over 40 years, we went from a cure rate of near zero to 80, 90%. The area I work in is osteosarcoma. Osteosarcoma, what you're seeing in that graph is survival data from SEER. And what it's trying to show you is since the mid 1980s, unfortunately, we haven't made any progress. It doesn't mean that research wasn't supported. It means the drugs that we keep trying aren't working yet. We do think there continues to be new opportunities, new ways of advancing things, but it's not like everything has been fixed. Areas like brain tumors, metastatic solid tumors, or areas where our prognosis isn't what we want it to be. It's not that we're not optimistic about things. MIRAs were reinstated this round. When they were reinstated, a PED-specific application was also called for. We hope that there was a lot of applications in response to this. We hope these are things that are going to get funded. And obviously, we continue to be optimistic. And what we're immensely thankful for is the CPRIT leadership really engages around pediatric cancer. And actually, I can show you numbers how CPRIT funds pediatrics at a much higher percentage than the NIH, which is really appreciated. But a lot of it is really the direct engagement of so many of the people who are here. They come to our committee meetings, they come to our meetings, and that's really been critically important. What are some of the things we've done? And here, I think I'm turning it over to Dr. Parsons. I already went one slide too far. I apologize. I was supposed to stop at the title slides.
That's okay. That's pretty close. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak and to be here in person with the Oversight Committee today. So organization, I think, was one of the words you mentioned there. And a big focus of our pediatric committee, given the nature of pediatric cancer as a relatively rare disease with relatively, as compared to adult cancer, smaller number of patients, but then also smaller number of researchers, has been to try to create a more effective statewide collaborative group. So really focusing not just on any one large medical center, but bringing together a group between our pediatric advisory committee that has representatives from sites across the state, from larger institutions, from smaller institutions, and then to apply some organization to this. This gets relevant to our the yearly or by every other year meetings and that we've had that I'll talk a little bit more in a moment. I won't, in the interest of your time, go through this, but this structure represents effort from a great number of people. You can see in terms of these different subcommittees, there are disease-specific subcommittees such as brain tumors. There are therapy-specific subcommittees such as cell therapy, as immunotherapies have become increasingly applied both in adult and pediatric cancers. One, for example, related to genetic predisposition and risk, as we try to understand why our patients are developing these cancers. So we've had incredible and great engagement from folks across the state in these multiple, video and conference calls, as well as our in-person meetings. And this, frankly, has been one of the key areas where Dr. Gorlick in particular has provided some leadership. We are continually adding and looking for new folks to get involved in this. And so this is an example of one of those. You may well be familiar with Dr. Varadachari from previous, involvement in CPRIT. He has recently joined our Pediatric Advisory Committee. Just an example of one of these where his expertise aligns closely with the mission of bringing new drugs to children and figuring out ways to actually implement that in the real world. And he has, as you can see from the slide, broad experience doing that across a range of products, including CPRIT funded companies and product development. So an example of where we're trying to be strategic and bringing new folks into our advisory committee who can really help with our mission. So most of our activity is done by an action by email, Zoom, video conferences, et cetera, but we do find it very useful to all get together once in a while strategically. And so this was one of the last big meetings we had the summer of 2022. Funded both by CPRIT and engagement from CPRIT, as well as Annette Leslie and the Carson Leslie Foundation. it was actually an incredible several days of bringing together a number of the pediatric cancer researchers. So folks studying all different diseases, from basic laboratory researchers to clinical scientists, to bring them across the state, across the state, and strategize and think about ways that we could optimize our collaboration and identify other opportunities for continued advancement of our mission. So just to briefly summarize some of the key issues that we are discussing and focusing on. One is, even though there's been incredible progress in terms of some pediatric cancer therapies and therapies that have used it for our patients, there are still gaps in pediatric specific drug development. So in cases where there are pediatric cancer specific targets or other very rare populations, this, broadly speaking, not just for Texas, but broadly speaking, is a challenge. And so that's one that we've worked on and thought about and are continuing to address with folks from across the strait. The second is better understanding Texas and any of our Texas specific factors related to differential incidence rates for cancer patients, development of pediatric cancer across the state. We have a number of epidemiologists and researchers who are trying to understand, for example, environmental exposures and trying to understand other demographic features. As Dr. Gorlick emphasized, we have many children in Texas, and you all know, and trying to understand how they might be not only similar, but also different in any ways from patients across or children across the country is important. And then third, I think that Dr. Gorlick also highlighted was this evolving need of the AYA, adolescent and young adult cancer population. For many reasons, some related to access to care and gaps between pediatric and adult care, some related to observations of the individual diseases, for example, the increasing recent trend of increasing number of patients with colorectal cancer in this age group, and others related to the fact that some of our, even though their cure rates for the group as a whole is still quite decent, there are some of the particular cancers, the brain tumors, the metastatic sarcomas, and some of those that are in that group that are still the most challenging for us here in 2024. So these are really the areas that we're continuing to work on and strategize and think about. There have been a number of concrete steps that have also been taken from these meetings. One really related to the considerable investment that CPRIT has already put into pediatric research and specifically the core facilities. So for example, on the upper right of the slide, the patient-derived xenograft, PDX, the mouse tumor facilities. CPRIT has invested in cores for both adult and pediatric cancers and trying to make sure that do nothing more in terms of specific support, but rather make sure that the information is shared between those, the data on what is available is more easily accessible to researchers, that some of the methods and ways that they're handled and created are homogenized and made uniform across projects. The second, in terms of enhancing the website to give better information to all researchers across Texas and frankly outside of Texas about what's available through those core facilities. Thinking about in the second two boxes you can see below there, how to integrate preclinical testing and more successfully move that forward to trials and development integration, as evidenced by some of the folks we have involved in our committee, focusing on data harmonization and sharing. So for example, many of the core projects, the MIRA projects, have generated data about the genomics of childhood cancer, for example, and the specific genetic mutations that occur in those tumors. There are a number of ways those data are made available, and as a requirement of these projects, they're always made available in some fashion, but there's being made available and then there's being made readily and easily accessible and available, and that's what we're focusing on. In addition to emphasizing that RFAs and emphasis for future projects should be one criteria to make as much use of these previously funded and ongoing funded cores as possible so that we don't need to recreate the wheel to produce some new mouse models, for example, if we already have several facilities. And this has been, so concrete steps have come out of the strategies as well as that in-person meeting that we highlight here. One ongoing goal, as I already mentioned, is we really want to make sure we're obviously in the best position here in the state to understand what's most important for our patients here in Texas. And so to focus, for example, on understanding where the pediatric and young adult patients are being diagnosed, where they're being treated, how are they being referred to medical centers, how are they having access to clinical trials, and trying to overcome some of the barriers to that, especially amongst some of the rural populations or those who do not have as easily accessible route to one of the academic medical centers, and as well as understanding the capabilities of all of our sites across Texas to both lead, but then also participate in clinical trials. Because if we're talking about trials that are multi-institutional trials across the state, yes, there are some specific centers that might have a lot of resources for the statistical design or have the drugs, the preclinical testing, but we want to have access to patients everywhere. And we also similarly want to have access to researchers and centers everywhere. So that's one thing that we've actually been focusing on working now to obtain some more precise data on these things so that we can better strategize what we're going to do in the future. We've talked about creating and continuing some of these same funding mechanisms and others that would accrue patients throughout Texas. This is really repeating some of the same goals that we've talked about a couple of times now in terms of enhancing drug development, working across the state to identify specific subgroups that might be relevant, particular therapies, to continuing to grow our advisory counseling, particularly with industry representatives and others to give us a better practical, some complementary strategic advice on how to move things forward for our patients, to working towards interventions, to really having a focus on underserved populations and providing services, not just to those who are at the biggest centers, but across the state. Couple of specific requests and things we consider. And one is, again, we're very grateful for the support that has gone to pediatric cancer projects and specifically the pediatric kind of call outs for individual investigator grants, opportunities for the CORES and MIRA grants. And we're specifically recommending and hoping that we'll continue to request applications for new projects that are in these critical need areas, for example, such as the AYA population and others. We are, again, I hope emphasized a couple of times the focus on drug development and bringing novel therapies to trials and patients. That I know is that translational to clinical aspect is obviously the top priority for CPRIT, and that's what we're really working on here. But looking for investigators who have new ideas about research related to drug development of pediatric relevant therapies. And then also, well, I guess the last bullet point we've already discussed in terms of pediatric drug development and then also incorporating drug manufacturing. So in terms of just some of our core recommendations and thanks, we consider it absolutely critical to continue these pediatric specific applications as the CPRIT has done for ever since I came here to Texas in 2008, specifically related to the CORE Awards, which are an incredible resource for investigators at multiple institutions. The MIRA grants, which I think are particularly important in the pediatric context of a rare disease that we need to collaborate even more, perhaps, than some of our adult colleagues who, you know, at Dr. Gorlick's institution, if we're trying to devise a trial for adult lung cancer or breast cancer patients, that's entirely feasible as an institutional study, whereas there's no pediatric cancer disease where that can really be done. Making sure that we can continue to enhance the projects that we're talking about enhancing the website so that the information about resources and availability of models can be made more accessible, to improve and optimize the funds that have already been and continue to be invested in model development and preclinical testing to harmonize some of the procedures used there and make those data known and available, to continue to enhance ability to use the CORES. So both in terms of making the data and methods and things that individual investigators would need to know about and have be relatively reliable and consistent across CORES, be clear and obvious, but also further encouraging future investigators to prioritize use of these CORES in this project. And then we've actually been considering kind of writing up a brief manuscript describing some of these strategies and our experience here in the state, which I think could be a good way to make others knowledgeable of the incredible progress and support from CPRIT. In terms of longer term opportunities to hopefully utilize the CORES along potentially with a new RFP to emphasize what we've been discussing, which is enhanced collaboration across the state, emphasis on drug development, data sharing, increased access to trials, and then perhaps even proposing common infrastructure for some of the aspects of pediatric cancer research, including additional innovations or thoughts in terms of IRB collaboration, in terms of clinical trial infrastructure and ways to really bring trials and drugs to patients from across the state. We're planning our next committee group get together. It's every other year. So coming up this fall, will be again supported by CPRIT, the Carson Leslie Foundation, a number of other foundations and folks who've been very generous, as you see here. We're looking forward to that, and we'll report back from there. So in the one slide summary, we're very thankful on behalf of both our researchers, our patients, and their families for the pediatric support from CPRIT. We've had incredible innovation and allowed scientific breakthroughs to occur that have benefited children in Texas. And we're very thankful and hope that that will continue in the future. So thank you very much.
Excellent presentation, both of you. Exciting opportunities. I know we have questions for our presenters.
Yes.
Dr. Hernandez.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Thank you for what you do for our children. It's a tough job, heartbreaking to say the least, but thank you for what you do. A couple of things. You saw in one of your slides, and maybe you don't know the answer, maybe Wayne can answer this. You said a core facility support award call did not occur last year. Do we know why?
I would probably need Wayne's help, but I don't think there were any core facilities awarded last year. I'm not sure of the decision. I'm assuming it was funding, but
it was available, or was not? Because I'm reading this, it was not even public.
I don't think it was available. I would defer to others.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't issue.
Okay. I guess I'll ask her later.
Yeah.
Also, what is for the public to understand, what do you mean core facility? What is that?
So core facilities are facilities that provide infrastructure. They're not about necessarily conducting research. It's about serving a framework that allows other people to use the tool that the particular core facility provides. So if it's a model generation facility, the idea is you would make the model, and then whatever researcher wanted to use it, they would be able to use that particular model. What Dr. Parsons was sharing that is we're trying to make that use even easier.
Sure.
So, these core facilities have done what they've proposed. There are people getting access, but we want to make the access even easier. Like, let's put it in a resource where,
Are these core facilities you're referring to, or where are they located?
Each institution competes for them. Each, as I understand.
But currently, do you know where they're located now?
I know, so it is on the slide. I know the PDX model facility I'm referring to is a GRE, which is in San
Do you have anything
Antonio.
along the border? Are you aware of any core facilities along the border?
I think Patrick Reynolds. So,
sure.
So you're testing my
no
memory, but
I didn't mean
I
that.
think the answer is yes, but I'm not positive.
Sure.
There is a core facility at UT Rio Grande Valley that Dr. Chauhan leads. That's an integrated cancer research facility that provides a variety of cancer services and
Yes, ma'am.
technologies for all cancer researchers.
Great. And to these core facilities, you say you want to make it utilization easier. They don't charge, right? I mean, everybody exchanges free information, data, everything occurs that way?
Correct. Just being complete, when you send a mouse model, the recipient typically pays the FedEx charge.
Sure.
But
Yes, sir.
beyond that.
But beyond
Correct.
that, well, data sharing, everybody's only one Texas, right? Okay.
Correct.
And then the organization, the ACCC organizational chart, I see all the members. So obviously I don't know all these gentlemen and ladies, scientists, but I'm assuming they're from what I call rural areas as well, where they would be Beaumont or that's Paso. They're from those areas as well.
And one of the subcommittees chose to call its name the Frontiers Committee.
Okay.
And what the Frontiers Committee was all about was enhancing representation of rural and smaller programs.
Yes, sir.
So there's specifically a committee devoted to that topic.
Great. And then the last thing I had was, speaking of research in COG. So the patients that exist in Texas that are near a COG center, say, MD Anderson, right, or Baylor. So what happens to a young American or a young child as well, or young youth that's located, say, in Beaumont, or they're located in Uvalde, or They're located somewhere between El Paso or Laredo, somewhere there. Do they have, are you guys working collaboratively so that that individual has the same access? Because, or are they having to go to, say, Houston, Dallas to initiate protocols? Because we're all, my understanding from oncology, we're all, you guys are all protocol driven, right? Everything, you guys do best practice for everything. So how are you guys dealing with that dilemma where people are in those regions? Are they have this, I mean, healthcare is available, but if you're near it, right? It doesn't mean it's everywhere. So how are you guys dealing with that?
Yeah, that's a lot of the purview of that frontier subcommittee, and we're worried about differential access for different patient populations. So folks that are part of this committee include folks who are in the El Paso area, the Lubbock area. But at the same time, if you get to a smaller geographic area, something like Beaumont,
Right.
I am not aware that there's a pediatric oncologist that even exists within that regional area. If you look at the United States, there's probably around 1,000 pediatric oncologists in the country. And the multidisciplinary care that's necessary for what we do with patients getting radiation, surgery, and chemotherapy typically,
right,
it's challenging.
Right.
So being honest, patients from areas where there's no peds oncologists will typically go to a program where at least there's a small program. If you look throughout Texas, there's small programs, medium size and large. We're trying to ensure that the offerings in each of those are equivalent. But we're worried that there are disparities.
Yeah, because what I see, I mean, I'm glad you guys are doing this. One of the concerns that, because I've seen it, is that some children are not on protocols because they don't have the proper infrastructure in those communities. And with technology, I mean, come on, we deal with insurance companies all the time. When I want to see a doctor, I get on my phone, right? So there's ways for your organization to take care of people in those areas, but also I think it's our responsibility, CPRIT, to give you the tools, the infrastructure in some of those areas that don't get the same access that every other Texan does. So I applaud what you're doing, and I look forward to more of your presentations in the future. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have time for one other question, Dr. Patel.
Thank you very much, Richard. Appreciate it. Dr. Parsons. When you look at tab 8, page 16, it talks about the impact data. You see the impact data, and it's $661 million. That's wrong. $700 million, and of which prevention is only $2 million. What are the thoughts of your committee as regards going forwards, considering we're going to take into account up to the age of 39 as regards prevention?
Yeah. So with the question specifically being, how are we going to better focus on prevention, or how are we going to get a better return on investment for CPRIT dollars invested in prevention projects?
As regards return of investment, we do have the adult data.
Yeah.
But it'll be significantly more as regards the ROI in looking at the PD population. But my question is, what are we going to do going forwards in terms of prevention, in identification of risk factors, prevention of cancer in the future, prevention of mental health issues, prevention of chemo brain, for example? Where is the committee as regards such issues, and how do you envision?
Thank you. That's a wonderful question. I think as you clarified the definition of prevention you're using, there's a very broad one that frankly would also encompass one of our, in addition to what we classically think of as primary, secondary prevention at all, which is becoming an increasing focus in pediatrics. Historically, it's been more challenging because we have less of an understanding of of exposures or smoking or other factors, dietary factors that we can modify or potentially study and improve. But there is actually, for example, in prevention related to genetic understanding of our patients and why they're developing their cancers, and genetic syndromes or genetic cancer symptoms such as Leaf-Romani disease and others you're familiar with. There now are opportunities because there are evolving data that once those patients can be diagnosed early, then we can implement prevention surveillance protocols. And there's now data emerging for specific pediatric cancer types that can improve outcomes for patients. So that's changing the game a little bit in terms of our ability to demonstrate effect, and for researchers who are focused on that area to demonstrate practical effect from those projects. But more broadly, I think in terms of prevention, the emphasis as we're curing 80+% of our patients on survivorship, prevention of other poor health outcomes. This is becoming an increasing focus more broadly in the pediatric oncology community, but also for one of our specific committees to try and understand. So much of the focus is on how can we more effectively treat the cancers that we're not treating as well as we'd like to now, the ones we've focused on here. But for the other patients, the leukemia patients who are being effectively treated, how can we have lifelong programs to both understand the other morbidities they're faced with and also prevent them? And I think increasingly for our survivorship committee and others, that's going to be a big part of this broad prevention kind of umbrella. Yep.
Thank you very much. Oh, goodness. Okay. All right. Dr. Rosenfeld and then Mr. Montgomery, and then we'll wrap this up.
The first is if you go to your national meeting, talk to colleagues around the country. Do they know about the secret pediatric program? What do they think about it? That's the first one.
That's an easy one. Yes, they know, and they're completely jealous, meaning this is a unique mechanism for Texas, and they're like, jealous is the right word.
So that's the first one. Excellent answer. And the second is, could you describe what you think is the major therapeutic breakthrough that has come because of CPRIT funding in pediatric cancer?
I think it's the whole. So in pediatrics, there have been specific drugs that work in specific subset of patients, whether it's like neuroblastoma, whether it's, now the sort of newest advance is menin inhibitors for MLL rearranged leukemias. I think we can all point to different ones. I think the way pediatrics has begun to advance is entity by entity. And that's epitomized by sort of a personalized medicine approach. And that's why I was kind of looking at Dr. Parsons, who's like the expert on this.
Yeah. As a concept, I think that's true. I think there's a number of specific examples. So one good one would be in the care of patients with liver tumors, for example. So unlike in adults, the most common liver tumor in children is hepatoblastoma, as you may well know, although older children do get HCC and others. CPRIT has invested in my 15 years in the state in research projects related to hepatoblastoma, including a MIRA project that I participated in, as well as several others, which other investigators across the state have been in, as well as individual research projects that have really served to define our understanding of the molecular underfeatures of hepatoblastoma, it's incredibly diverse disease. In some cases, it can be cured with a resection. In others, it's a horrible, progressive metastatic kind of disease. Understanding what the molecular features are related to that. That knowledge from those early projects has been applied then to now CPRIT funded trials of immunotherapies for those patients using that knowledge. It's also been disseminated to national and international trials. So for example, risk classification systems for children with hepatoblastoma based on the molecular features that alter how are they treated on these actual therapeutic trials, not just here in the United States, but across the world. So I think broadly, Dr. Gorlick's answer is the correct one, that it's many of the progress has been in terms of demonstrating the effect of this collaboration, the ability to treat patients in a more targeted, strategic, personalized way based on understanding their genetics and biology. But there are actually a number of specific examples where CPRIT has demonstrably made an impact for patients with specific diagnoses.
Thank you.
Yep.
I yield my time back to the chair.
All right, very good. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We
Thank you.
appreciate your efforts. Now we'll hear from the Geographic Diversity Advisory Committee. Dr. LeBeau, please introduce Dr. Sarah Williams-Blangero and Dr. Robert Kirkin, who will provide the Geographic Diversity Advisory Committee's annual report.
But we're delighted to have both Dr. Williams-Blangero and Dr. Kirkin here to speak to us today and represent the Geographic Diversity Advisory Committee. Dr. Williams-Blangero is a renowned genetic epidemiologist who received her doctorate in biological anthropology from Case Western Reserve University. She is currently the chair of the Department of Human Genetics and the UT Rio Grande Valley School of Medicine. She has had a number of leadership roles in Texas at different institutions. And she first came to the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley in 2014 to become the founding director of the South Texas Diabetes and Obesity Institute. Her research has focused on the genetic determinants of risk for complex diseases in minority populations, including the Jarel ethnic group of Nepal and Mexican Americans. Dr. Robert Kirkin is currently the Dean of the College of Science at the University of Texas at El Paso. He is a research scientist and has been working in the field of cytokine cell signaling, cancer biology, and immunology. His current research has focused on cell signaling pathways that are responsible for immune cell-derived pathologies to understand the mechanisms by which certain diseases originate and to allow for the development of new therapeutic approaches. Dr. Kirkin received his PhD in biomedical sciences at Wright State University in Ohio. So welcome, Dr. Williams-Blangero and Dr. Kirkin.
Morning. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you this morning about the Geographic Diversity Advisory Committee. Just to remind you of what our charge is, the Geographic Advisory Committee advises the Oversight Committee and staff on the university's special needs and challenges in developing cancer research capacity in locations that are far away from the major cancer centers in the major metropolitan areas. The members represent universities that are located 100 miles or more from a National Cancer Institute designated center in Houston, Dallas, or San Antonio. Our committee was formed in 2021, and we had monthly meetings for the first year as we really worked to develop our strategies and our goals and to develop a plan for improving cancer research across all of Texas. And we shifted to quarterly meetings in mid-2022, and we've had 2 meetings since we last presented to the Oversight Committee. These are our members. They represent 7 institutions that are 100 miles or more away from a national cancer center. The Texas Regional Excellence in Cancer Award was developed by CPRIT as a really innovative approach to build research capacity at institutions that are located 100 miles away from a national cancer center. These TREC awards have had a transformational impact on cancer research at resource-limited TREC-eligible institutions. And the Geographic Diversity Advisory Committee has built on these TREC awards to recommend new funding mechanisms that will ensure that the continued transformation of TREC-eligible institutions into impactful centers for cancer research. Oops. We currently have 5 of these TREC awards active, one at the University of Texas at El Paso that you're going to hear about today, the Center for Study of Hispanic Cancer Disparities, Texas Tech Health Science Center, the Texas Regional Excellence in Cancer Developmental Therapeutics Center, at Texas A&M University System Health Science Center for Gene, Environment, and Lifestyle Interactions in Cancer, the Texas Tech University Health Science Center at El Paso, their Center on Impacting Cancer Outcomes in Hispanics, and the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, the South Texas Center for Excellence in Cancer Research. TREC-eligible institutions can impact cancer in special ways. They're addressing cancer health disparities, mainly in underserved populations. They're conducting this research with underserved populations that are also underrepresented in biomedical research. They're increasing the scientific workforce devoted to cancer research and building capacity for cancer research in Texas. We've diversified the types of support available for TREC-eligible institutions. 3 new programs came online this year: a pilot study awards program to support high-risk, high-reward studies and generate preliminary data, postdoctoral training grants to support the expansion of the workforce in Texas that is focused on cancer research, and major instrumentation grants to expand the range of opportunities for research in cancer. And those first awards were made last fall, with pilot studies going to Texas Tech and to UTRGV, major instrumentation grants going to Baylor, Texas Tech Health Science Center, Texas A&M, and a postdoctoral training grant going to the University of Texas at El Paso. CPRIT now then has 4 grant funding mechanisms supporting the transformation of cancer research at TREC-eligible institutions. And the next program that we want to focus on developing and expanding is the TREC Clinical Trial Infrastructure Award. Clinical trial infrastructure support at TREC-eligible institutions would allow for clinical trials to reach broader communities. The committee recommends development of a clinical trials infrastructure support grant of approximately $500,000 per year for 2 years that could be used to fund clinical trial infrastructure needs such as software, staffing, and clinical laboratory equipment. Ultimately, such an award can improve access to clinical trials for the rural and minority populations that are served by TREC-eligible institutions. Other mechanisms that will enhance research at TREC-eligible institutions that we're considering are a recruitment award that would enable these institutions to attain and maintain a critical mass of cancer researchers, shared core facility awards that would enable TREC-eligible institutions to leverage resources across those institutions and foster collaboration through development of shared core facilities. And finally, a clinical trials readiness program to support community outreach to build patient registries and foster participation in clinical trials in the areas that are served by TREC-eligible institutions. CPRIT funding awarding to institutions has been transformational for those TREC-eligible institutions. It's expanded research on cancer, grown the workforce focused on cancer, work to include underserved populations in both basic and clinical research, and had a positive impact on the health of the local population. So these awards really are transforming cancer education, research, and health. And no place highlights this better than the University of Texas at El Paso. We recently started having each center describe what's going on at their university, and the committee was just so incredibly impressed by the work that's going on at UTEP, and we really wanted you to hear about that. So thank you.
Now? Yes. Okay, there it is. No, it's a very much a pleasure for me to be here this morning to tell you a little bit about the research at UTEP. What I hope to be able to share with you is just some of the broader reaching goals that we're trying to address, especially with our regional population, some of the research and capacity building that we're currently undergoing. So those of you that haven't been out to El Paso very much or don't know a lot about its origins, of course, El Paso was a mining community. That was first and foremost over 100 years ago. But it opened its doors in 1914 as the Texas School of Mines and Metallurgy. And of course, the university has evolved dramatically through the years. Today, of course, UTEP is a comprehensive public research university that is increasing access to excellent higher education. And what does that really mean? It means that we admit 100% of our students to UTEP. And when we say we give them access to excellent higher education, this is really focused on scholarly work. And I would say, of course, as Dean of Science, it's being able to work in laboratories and do really exciting things. Of course, all of you appreciate that UTEP is a Carnegie R1 institution, about 24,000 students. 95% of them are minority, with about half of those first generation. We consistently rank in #1 in social mobility here in Texas as well. But what you may not know is UTEP actually does about $150 million a year in annual research expenditures, and we're growing that year over year for the past 15 years, actually. Of course, our population is mostly Hispanic, 83%, but the origin of our population is about 96% Mexican origin, which I think gives us a very unique opportunity to better understand our population, understand cancer, understand healthcare inequities, and understand health disparities across that broad spectrum that really impacts our population as a whole. So if you look at this chart, the way I look at this is that if you look on the left, this would be Hispanic health span. So paradoxically, Hispanics live longer than non-Hispanic whites, but they live less well. And so what we'd like to be able to do is understand that, the reasons behind that, so that we can have something more to the right chart where we push up and have them live longer, healthier lives before they succumb to their demise. You've seen this, probably this chart many times, cancer disparities and the cancer profiles and incidence in the state of Texas in the box on the left. But it's the box on the right that talks about the cancer incidence in El Paso County. So unlike the rest of the state of Texas, in which cancer incidence is relatively stable, El Paso County cancer is growing. So it's increasing, and that's over the past 5 years. And so we're trying to figure out what are the causes behind that and what can we do to intervene. As you probably know, El Paso and Juarez is the largest binational community in the world. We can have up to 5 generations of Hispanics living in this region. So this is, again, an incredible opportunity to better understand our population, investigate it, and perhaps find some of the root causes for certain cancers or health disparities that we exhibit. So our approach has really been to build infrastructure and capacity. You need to be able to have an environment in which you can ask very difficult and challenging questions. And so we've focused our areas on probably those 5 columns there. One is infrastructure, and these are our core laboratories. These are incredible core laboratories that we've been able to build. If you talk about proteomics and genomics, if you're talking about analytics, if you want to know about data storage, we have built an incredible infrastructure there, mostly through NIH funding. Strategic hires, we know we're not going to have huge departments focused on individual cancers or programs, so we have to think about critical masses and how we can leverage that. So we make strategic investments, more recently driving the infrastructure, especially in biostatistics, data analytics, AI, and machine learning. UTEP, I think, focuses very strongly on collaborations, interdisciplinary research. We need to cut across departments and programs and colleges to be able to do that. And of course, we collaborate with our hospitals and the leading cancer clinics like MD Anderson for not only access to patient samples, for example, but also equipment, technology, and mentorship. And I think our last point there, our real secret weapon in this whole process is our community health workers that we call promotores. These individuals have their pulse on the community. They are the community. They are embedded in the community. They have the trust of individuals to be able to ask very difficult and challenging questions. And this is very important for us to determine social behavioral determinants of health, for example. Our key areas, this would be our key areas of cancer focus. We try to keep those relatively confined, mostly those cancers that disproportionately affect our population, and try to build our team around those types of cancers. If you look at the investment of CPRIT and how it's really transforming UTEP, I think this is a pretty good slide. So essentially, I've outlined mostly all the cancer researchers at UTEP, which is not, this wouldn't even be a committee at most of the institutions, I think, here in Texas. But if you look at those faculty that are highlighted in the orange, those boxes, those are faculty that have been funded by the CPRIT track and or recruited to UTEP to do cancer research. So just with this CPRIT investment that we were awarded just a couple of years ago, it's almost doubled our cancer research profile. So major investment. And of course, all of these faculty are securing grants from for other agencies and training students in this type of research that go on quite often to become medical doctors. So I told you a little bit about the cancer research area in the first bar. I told you the infrastructure we're building. I won't go through the details, but we're focusing on these key experimental areas in those boxes there. But the outcome, the broader impacts we hope to be able to accomplish is reduce health disparities, generate health policy changes, and train that next generation of Hispanic cancer health disparity researchers, but also a new class of clinicians, physicians, researchers that are culturally sensitive that'll take up the cause. I think through our work, it's been very important and critical because most of our institutions, the medical establishment in El Paso is not running many clinical trials. We don't have access to a lot of clinical data. It is in its development stages, I would say. But we've been able to build very close contacts with all of these institutions, including very good contacts with hospitals in Juarez. And so we've been trying to also, in addition to our basic research, build out our biorepository of primary human tumors so that we can study those both at the genetic level as well as at the molecular level to, again, try to make some inroads into these issues of health disparities. And this has been, I think, critically important for our work. This kind of highlights, and it sort of was supposed to be a simple model, but maybe it's not. But essentially the point is collecting samples from local hospitals, but allowing us to utilize those key technologies, imaging technologies, core laboratories, proteomics, genomics, and to try to provide assistance or support, not only in the research front, but also with the clinical oncologists, for example, that are in our region, and have a coordinating center there in the middle that basically archives that material, banks the data, keeps that as essential resources along with all of the information that we have on those individual cases. So some of the things that we've been really excited about doing over the years has been trying to work with the oncologists on some of the more difficult, challenging cases. As you know, often some of the cases that they bring to us is someone that's failed frontline chemotherapy, second line, failed bone marrow transplant. So we really see this as an opportunity to try to investigate it with all these core laboratories. Can we find some genetic basis? Can we do some exome work or look at the entire transcriptomic of that individual patient? So we're doing that. In this case, was one instance where it was a 32-month-old female. She had a pretty rare brain tumor. The pressure had built up significantly in her skull. They were able to put a shunt in, relieve some of that cerebral spinal fluid, and we were able to just to get a few cells. Of course, our laboratories are built for nanotechnology, nano analysis. From there, we were able to do screens. We took FDA-approved drugs. We just looked at drug sensitivity assays. We looked for cell surface markers. We did all this information that I won't go through it, but just the intracellular communication within the cell. And we did find one drug, dasatinib, that was very effective at blocking this pathway and leaving the others unaffected at very low concentrations of drugs. So we provided this to the clinicians. They did decide to make the case to use that drug. That tumor did appear to shrink. The blood flow pressures were greatly reduced, and that tumor was actually removed at MD Anderson Cancer Center. And if you can just look at the MRI images that are up there, 2 years out, that individual is actually cancer-free at this point. So again, I think it was really, I think, exciting to have millions of dollars of equipment that we could help contribute to a case such as this. And the other case I'll show is a case of acute myeloid leukemia. It was a FLT3 mutation. We had banked this patient's blood. It was a 2-year-old male in our biodata repository. We were able to begin doing some testing. We found an interesting finding about a particular mutation in this, we call it tyrosine kinase receptor. The hospital did confirm this. El Paso Children's Hospital confirmed that. There was a clinical trial that was being performed at St. Jude's Research Hospital. They were able to enroll that child in the hospital. So I would say at UTEP, I focused on a lot of the molecular, the protein, the technologies that are mostly in the sciences, but I would think at UTEP, we are using all the resources, all of the colleges, or behavioral, or the business and the economics of cancer, for example, all working together in unified teams to be able to do this kind of research to make inroads on these multifaceted problems. What are some of the outcomes? Of course, if you look on the left bar, you see where our sources of funding are. I told you about the middle boxes, about our targeted programs and what we're working on. But if you look at the right, this is just recent accomplishments in grant funding. So for example, we have an NIH CO6 to build an imaging center. This is an incredibly complicated, there's only a handful of these awards awarded across the country. We have light sheet technology, which I won't go into, but I don't think there's anyone in Texas that has this. We have this to do incredibly fine-tuned brain imaging, especially on cancers, and look at vascular networks. The second one, of course, is our TREC Award, which we discussed. There's community engagement awards. We were just awarded an NIH first, again, only a handful across the country, a $15 million grant to hire and develop scientists that will work on health disparities. Okay, so again, incredibly competitive across the US for that. And building out that research and capacity, we are also awarded a CPRIT TREC Award for postdoc training, which is critical to get those researchers in and support our investigators. If you look at our early stage, you can just look through the numbers here in the boxes. This is essentially a summary of 2 years worth of outcomes and metrics. 24 publications, multiple presentations. We have filed about 4 provisional patents at this point. As you look at the grant submissions there, you can see 38 and 41 submitted just by these early stage investigators that were funded by CPRIT. And if you look at the awards that we've already been funded, it's over $4 million worth of funding from non-CPRIT sources. So we're trying to leverage those investments. We're reaching out to federal agencies to secure additional funding to be able to carry on this work. So in conclusion, I would say UTEP is addressing and making significant progress in improving health equity in our region's population. And I thank you for your attention.
No, it's fantastic presentation from you both. Appreciate you very much. Cancer disparities and geographic diversity is just such a huge focus for us on the OC committee, and it's exciting to see your success and hope to hear more about that in the future. So I know we have some questions. Mr. Margot.
I just want to say amen, hallelujah. I mean, it's tremendous. People don't understand our region, and it really is a region, and we're not separated by a boundary between Mexico and the States.
It's a border place.
It is a region of 2.7 million people with an average age of 34. And we've been that way since 1659. And you really don't understand, people don't understand there's multi-generations on both sides, culturally, commerce, you name it, it's back and forth. And you really can't tell the difference between El Paso and Juarez if you stand at the top of one of our buildings and look south. Can't see the difference. And most people don't understand that. And no matter how much you explain, and I know firsthand, and Rob does too, probably, trying to explain who we are, where we are, and what we're all about, you can't understand till you come out there and see it and see what's there. And, but it is an area that I've always thought would be ripe for the type of testing that needs to be done with the Hispanic populations and the growth, and where Texas is going to be in a majority Hispanic population. With them, as Rob said, about 5 generations, you've got 5 generations you can test genetically. And I don't know where else you have that concentration. I'm told very few, if ever, if other. So just a great job. I'm a little biased, but that's a great job.
Little?
Poquito.
Poquito.
Anyone else?
Thank you for that great presentation once again, and very useful data. This is the perfect example of what at least my colleagues and I are shooting for, the fact that there is a great need all over the state of Texas, and there's a very novel forces, and of course new campuses are coming up. They're not all at the same level in the state of Texas, but we should be supporting institutions like yourself and all over the state to be sure, at least in my opinion, that we as Texans get the healthcare that we need. That young lady was a perfect example of the brain cancer, right? You need to have that infrastructure there, and we need to provide it, and we can provide it as CPRIT. This sustainability of TREC programs, for instance, I apologize, I did not, for myself, I didn't know it was a one renewable TREC award. That was never, as far as I'm concerned, that was never the intent. And also it to be capped at 10 years. You know, there's other programs, and we've been utilizing and funding for years, more than 10 years. And also, I think the ceiling needs to be raised as well, because this is your borderplex, as the mayor stated here, clearly has demonstrated what can be done if you allow communities to invest, and we support these institutions that need to be supported, just like we did before the previous 10 years when we spent $3 billion. And it's fine that the big medical centers are robust and they're thriving, but they have different resources. They have different philanthropists, different donors, different industry, different tax base, much stronger than your community or mine. And we should be pushing you forward to be just like them or better. And I'm glad you guys collaborate with MD Anderson. It's all about collaboration and team approach. But rest assured, I'm very proud of everything you've done thus far and what you're doing. And you're right, putting all those pieces together to take care of human being, whether it's social service or promoteras, all that together, it's really hard to do. And I'm glad you guys are taking it on. And again, I'm just so proud of the fact that you guys are excelling so well in El Paso. And I look forward to seeing the other regions do similar to what you're doing. And we're here to help you, just so you know.
Thank you. Very good. All right. Thank you both very much. Look forward to hearing from you again. We're going to move on to item 12. The chair recognizes Mr. Roberts to present the Health and Safety Code section 102.1062 waiver for Prevention Program Manager Carlton Allen.
Well, now we're to the exciting part of the agenda. Operational issues. I request your approval of an FY 2024 conflict of interest waiver for Carlton Allen, our program manager for prevention pursuant to state law, is what this request is for. The background and the specifics are provided in the memo behind tab 9. I'll entertain any questions and request your approval.
We have any questions for Mr. Roberts? No. Is there a motion to approve the proposed Health and Safety Code Section 102.1062 waiver for Mr. Allen?
So second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to items 13 and 14. The chair now recognizes Ms. Eckel to discuss the proposed administrative rule changes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the proposed rule changes are located behind tab 10 of your meeting books. We only have proposed amendments for this meeting affecting chapters 701 and 703. The first change to 701 is to actually add our CPRIT's definition of tranche to our administrative rules. It's actually a term that CPRIT has been using for over a decade and grantees are very familiar with, but we realized that we should probably go ahead and add it to our list of defined terms. So tranche is proposed to be added there, and then through 703 is just to capitalize the term where it already appears. So non-substantive changes in chapter 703. And if you approve it today, we'll send this over to the Texas Register for publication, for public comment, and bring any comments back to at the May Oversight Committee meeting.
Are there any questions for Ms. Eckel? Members, is there a motion to approve the publication of the proposed changes to the Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 701 and 703 in the Texas Register? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving to item 14, Ms. Eckel, would you explain the legislative update?
Just in general legislative updates.
Yeah, brief is good.
Yeah. Gonna pull on that thread. So the CPRIT's administrative rules kindly require the Oversight Committee members to receive training on the Public Information Act and Open Meetings Act after each regular legislative session. Good news or bad news, depending on how you feel about training in open government. There were not really any changes from the last session that impact Oversight Committee members, so no worries there. And not many that also impact CPRIT as well. It's as far as the Public Information Act goes, a couple procedural requirements that we'll have to follow when we're responding to requests for information through the Public Information Act. And as far as the Open Meetings Act goes, again, no major changes there that would impact CPRIT. So sadly, that is your overall summary of any proposed or any updates to the Public Information Act and Open Meetings Act. We did summarize it for you behind tab 11. And you'll also see a list of updates from the Attorney General's office, as well as just an overall summary for you for the Public Information Act and Open Meetings Act. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that exhilarating
And
brief
Mr. Montgomery,
explanation.
if you will note, Cameron is wearing a Texas Ranger,
I am.
which will be factored into her next performance evaluation.
I knew it would be, but I'm very proud. For all those who may not know, the Rangers won the World Series.
And you should be proud.
How'd the Astros do? Not
They
so
came
good.
in-
You know what? I think they lost.
Oh, did
to
they?
the
Oh, shoot.
Rangers.
Wow.
You know,
What a shame.
they didn't even get to the World Series. Is that right?
Enjoy it while you can.
I am. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move to items 15 and 16, the Chief Operating Officer Report and Contract Approvals. Ms. McConnell, Chair recognizes you to present the Chief Operating Officer's Report.
Well, that's a tough act to follow. I can't talk about
sports, so. So you have my report. I'll just highlight that in terms of our appropriations for this year, we did receive an additional $182,000 for the required 5% salary increase for all state employees. So this was much overdue for state employees. I think it's been dozens of years since the last mandated salary increase, but unlike most agencies where they received additional general revenue to cover their salaries, ours came out of our bond proceeds. So that reduced some of our funding for grants. That's the trade-off. With respect to our revenue sharing, we received just under $150,000 in revenue sharing in the first quarter. A majority of that was from Merck and Company from the sale of Wellereg. Just to highlight, in terms of the sales, we get quarterly notices of our distributions, and then, the check shows up. But the Wellereg apparently is expanding in terms of international sales. What I reported to you was the third quarter distribution, and we will be receiving a fourth quarter distribution, which is a little over $100,000. But the components of those sales are international and now include Australia, Hong Kong, and South Korea, in addition to Brazil, Canada, Israel, and the United Kingdom that were on there previously. By far, sales in the U.S. are the majority. So in the fourth quarter of 23, total sales was about $71 million, and 68 million of that was in the U.S. So the last item I want to highlight is our debt issuance. We've completed actually all of our debt issuance for this year. 298.4 million has been issued by TPFA on our behalf. What occurred is the first quarter, early in the first quarter in October, 92.8 million in commercial paper notes was issued to cover our initial requirements for both our operating costs as well as some grants. But then TPFA looked at the bond market and decided that in November, they were going to do another long-term issuance. And so they issued the full 298.4 million that we had projected for the year. And that meant that not the 92.8 million in commercial paper notes that we had issued earlier was refunded. And then there was new money from the remainder. So we are done for the year, and we'll move on to 2025. Before I move on, are there any questions? Okay. So the last item I'll discuss are the requests to approve the outside council contract amendments. Originally, we had issued contracts of $95,000 to both Norton Rose Fulbright and McDermott Will and Emery because they do the intellectual property due diligence for the companies in the product development research. Originally, there was only one cycle planned for in product development research this year, but with the second cycle that Mr. Smith described earlier in the meeting, there are another 15 companies that will be going through that process. So the request is to increase both contracts by $60,000. So bringing each contract to $155,000 in order to make sure that there's enough coverage for the intellectual property due diligence of any of those companies that advance through that process.
Thank you very much, Ms. McConnell. Are there any questions? Dr. Rosenfeld?
One quick question. Any planning starting for the CPRIT biannual meeting yet?
Yes, there is. Well, we have to issue some RFPs to proceed. I've no more updates other than that.
Very good. Members, is there a motion to increase the FY 2024 outside council contracts with Norton Rose Fulbright and McDermott Will and Emery to $155,000 each?
So second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
We're now moving on to item 17, our communications report. Chair recognizes CPRIT's Communications Director, Mark Leffler, to update us on CPRIT's communication activities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. I believe my report, my scintillating report, is on tab number 14, and of course, that's number 1 in your heart. So please take a look at that. Really, the primary update is the significant accomplishment of the annual report, as was already mentioned. I do encourage everyone to check that out if you haven't gotten a chance to yet. It is packed with information, and it does represent a lot of the, not just the knowledge base contained within CPRIT, but the ingenuity and some of the innovation that we sort of pride ourselves on. So please check that out. I encourage you to see there's a couple new features. There is a prevention map that is organized by legislative district. So you can select any county in the state and you'll see how many, exactly what grants are listed for that county and what legislative district that falls in. So that may be helpful to you. Hopefully it's helpful to members of the legislature who've also gotten it. So check that out. There it is. And also encourage you to check out, we have some new videos. I think we have about 5 or 6 new videos featuring grantees from all across the state. So those are good, nice little snippets to watch. They're about 2 or 3 minutes long. So I encourage you to check those out. Then of course we do have our mission map that shows how CPRIT is accomplishing the mission in all parts of the state. And of course, please take a look at it. And if you see anything, any suggestions you'd like to make for next time, we're already going to start working on that next week for the next annual report. So please get those to me or Justin, and we're always welcome. We always welcome suggestions. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leffler. Any questions?
Briefly,
Mr. Montgomery?
yes, thank you very much. I think these are superb avenues for the public to know what we do. But I was just wondering, in the photographs at the end of your report, Mr. Margot and I are cut out. And the title of its top performing posts. And I just wonder if there's any connection there.
I blame social media.
Thank you.
Coincidence. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Leffler. Appreciate your work. Keeps you up. All right, we will come to item 18. The Oversight Committee will now move into closed session to discuss personnel action related to the Chief Executive Officer position. For members of the public watching this meeting, other than potential action related to the Chief Executive Officer position, we have reached the end of our agenda. I do not expect to take up other items after returning from closed session before adjourning the meeting. We go into closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074 to discuss matters regarding the Chief Executive Officer position. The following CPRIT staff shall join the Oversight Committee in a closed session. Mr. Wayne Roberts, CEO, and Mrs. Lisa Nelson, Human Resources. The time is currently 11:16. The board now is going to reconvene in open session. The time is 11:42 and we have our quorum. We need to go back and complete a action item for the Academic Research Awards. This is going to be the one award that had a. Thank you. We go back.
Hold on for 1 second.
Action items. The academic research award.
It's the delayed.
Okay, our action item will be on the Academic Research Award, RP 40291. And this is the award that Dr. Rosenfeld will not be voting on. So we have a motion to approve this award RP 240291.
So move.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, approval from at least 2/3 of the members, the motion carries. We'll record for the record again that Dr. Rosenfeld did not vote on this recommendation. Now pursuant to our discussion in closed session, is there a motion to direct CPRIT staff to issue a job posting internally for the CEO position consistent with the direction provided to Ms. Nelson and Mr. Roberts, and to create a special ad hoc personnel subcommittee consisting of myself as presiding officer, Cindy Payne as vice presiding officer, Dr. Mahendra Patel and Mr. D. Margot, who will review the applications, interview candidates, and make a recommendation to the Oversight Committee.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We will not take up standing agenda items 19, 20, or 21. Turning to the agenda item 22, our next regular Oversight Committee meeting will occur on May 15th. If there's no further business and there's no objection, the chair moves to adjourn this meeting. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The meeting stands adjourned at 11:44 a.m.